Hi, my name is Joy Brownmiller. I am a level design student in cohort 16 at the Guildhall at SMU. In this tutorial, I will be covering lighting basics in the May 2011 version of Unreal Development Kit, including how to place lights, types of lights, and some of the basic lighting components. To get started, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to place lights into the world. There are several ways to place lights into your UDK scene. The first and quickest option is to hold down the L key and click the left mouse button. This will place a basic point light into the world. While this is fine for very basic lighting, there are other ways of adding other light types into the scene. To place any other light type other than a point light, you must first open the content browser, which is located here at the top of the toolbar, and navigate to the Actor Classes tab. Now here there will be a section for lights, which you can pull down and will have all of the different light types available to you in UDK. I'm going to go ahead and select a spotlight to place in my scene. The first way that you can do this is you can right click and click Add Spotlight here, which will place it into your scene. And so you can see it better, I'll delete this one. Now if I wanted to add another way to do this is you can right click and click Add Recent, and it will show up in the list here as well as any other things you have recently placed. So the spotlight that I placed and the point light is also there. So I'm going to go ahead and add my spotlight, and now I have two spotlights in my world. Now let's say I wanted to get rid of one of these spotlights and instead go back and add an additional point light. You can do that by selecting whatever you would like to replace the current light with in the content browser, and then right click and click Replace With, and it will have whatever you have selected there, and it replaces it with a point light. You can add all of the lights in a level using these methods. Next, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about different types of lights available in UDK. The first and most basic type of light is going to be the point light. Now, point light illuminates in all directions, and it starts from the point in space in which the light is actually located. Regular point lights are completely static lights, and they cannot be moved or toggled in game, with the exception of movable and toggleable lights, which are a different class of lights that I will talk about in a minute. The next type of light is going to be a spotlight. Now, a spotlight, as you can see here, is a directional cone of light, and spotlights have several unique components that are very exclusive to this light type. They are the inner cone angle, the outer cone angle, and the radius. Now, if I bring up the lighting properties for this particular light by hitting F4, you can see here that it has its own set of components. Now, the inner cone angle is going to determine the angle in degrees from the center of the brightest part of the spotlight, and then the outer cone angle determines the angle from the center of the spotlight to the very outer edge of the light's effect. Now, as you can see here, the setting is for the outer cone angle is set to 44 and the inner cone angle is set to 0, and therefore there's this nice gradated edge along the edge of the light. If I were to change this number for the inner cone angle to 44 as well, it would give me a very harsh edge. So any time that the inner cone angle value is equal to or greater than the outer cone angle, you will have that hard edge. If I were to take this down to say 20, it would give me a softer edge. Unlike the standard light component setting for radius, the radius for a spotlight determines the distance of reach of the spotlight. The larger the radius, the farther away from the source the light will go. The default setting for this on a spotlight is 1024. Now, you can't very well see it here, but if I rotate the direction that the light is going, you can see in the browser how the cone is shaped. Now I can pull it up, and that's how far it will go. If I wanted to change this to a value of, say, 200, it automatically makes it much, much smaller, and you can no longer see it on the floor unless you get very close to it. So that is what the radius for a spotlight does. The next type of light that I would like to talk about is the directional lights. Now, directional lights are going to emit parallel rays of light in a very specific direction. Let me go ahead and replace this one. Right now, as you can see on the icon, the arrow is facing down, which is the direction that the light is going. These lights are really work well for simulating the sun or the moon or other celestial bodies. They point downward by default, but even if you're creating a scene with light at high noon, you should at least rotate it a few degrees in one direction. Otherwise, it can cause problems. These lights can also not be moved or toggled in-game. And as you can see, as you change the way that the light goes, it changes what you can see, what's lit up. The next type of light is a skylight. Now, skylights are really, with the use of light mass in the current version of UDK, skylights are more of a legacy light. They used to be used before light mass was available, but now directional lights with light mass have taken the place. But I'll go ahead and show you what a skylight does. A skylight is a hemispherical light source that it simulates the scattering of light from the sky. It does not cast shadows, and it lights the scene completely evenly. Now, this can be great if you're working in UDK and you want to have your scene lit so that you can see it before you put your lighting in. Other than that, you're really not going to be using this in UDK. I'm also going to go ahead and explain the difference between the toggleable light options and the movable lights, because as you can see, there are several different lights that have both of these options. As you can see here, toggleable lights are indicated by this little chain on the actual icon for the light. Now, a toggleable light can be toggled on and off in game using Kismet, but these lights cannot be moved in game and they cannot use light maps. The other type of light that's unique is going to be the movable light. Movable lights are indicated by this kind of shadowing effect on the back side of the icon. Movable lights can have their location moved in-game using Matinee, and they also can be toggled on and off in-game using Kismet. They do not take light maps as well. These are both things that are more advanced topics, but those are the basics. Next, I'm going to talk about individual lighting components. When you have your light selected, to bring up the components dialog box, you'll hit F4. This will bring up all of the different options available to you for that particular light. Now, the first and most basic option is the radius, and this is going to control the maximum radius of the light. It has no effect on directional lights or skylights, as those will light the entire scene. The higher the number, the farther away the light will be visible. So if we make this a very small number, as you can see, it affects how far away the light shines. The next is the fall-off exponent. This controls the radial fall-off of the light. The smaller the number, the less fall-off there is, and the harsher the edge of the light will be. So if we make this 0, as you can see, it's going to leave a very sharp edge. Versus if we make it 5, it's going to be very soft and slowly fade out into black. The next is the brightness. Now, as expected, the brightness controls the brightness of the light. So the higher the number, the brighter the light. As you can see though, because the radius is set to be only 500, it's not going to affect how far out the light shines, only the brightness within that radius. The next basic component is going to be your light color, and there are 3 different ways that you can choose your light color. The first is by clicking on this little bar here, which will bring up the color picker, and you can go in here and choose and use this little thing as well as the sliders to determine the color of the light, and you can tweak it any way you want. And you can also use the sliders down here for the RGB values. Another way to select the color of the light is to use this little eyedropper, and what it will do is capture a color from the scene and use that. So if you have a very specific color within your scene that you want to match, you can use the eyedropper tool to grab that color. And then the last way that you can adjust the color is to go down here and manually change the RGB values. And this will adjust the color of the light that way. Now, some other basic things that you want to be aware of. There's this little checkbox here that says enabled. This will enable and disable the light within the scene. It allows you to toggle the light on and off, but static lights cannot be toggled in game. And however, this is a useful feature to use while you're editing your lights to determine what effect a particular light is having on the scene. Another component that you want to be aware of is this cast shadows checkbox. If you uncheck this, now there's nothing to show that it's not casting shadows, but if you uncheck this, that light will no longer cast shadows on anything in the scene, and this will override any of these other cast shadow checkboxes. So make sure that if you want to have your light cast shadows in the scene, that you have that box checked. Otherwise, if you're just using it for static lighting or fill lighting, you might want to uncheck it, and this will improve performance. And that covers the basics of lighting, from placing lights, types of lights, and basic lighting components. Thank you for watching.